Obviously, Iga is somebody who has a great mentality and she wins a lot. On Jabeur, I think she's the nicest person and such a competitor on and off the court.
Tennis enthusiasts are reeling from an interview that Iga Świątek recently released. In a way that no one anticipated, the world's #2 revealed details about her relationship with Coco Gauff. She discussed challenges, pressure, and how a former adversary who became a friend really supported her during one of the most trying times in her career. This is not your usual tale of a tennis rivalry. This story is about two rivals who discovered something greater than mere victories and defeats on the court. Do you believe that tennis rivalries may genuinely improve friendships between players? Nobody had anticipated Iga Świątek stepping down for an interview and giving Coco Gauff credit for saving her career this year. However, the story is actually far more fascinating than the headline suggests. Iga did more than simply say that she respected her opponent. She opened up about her struggles and how having Coco in her life helped to get through difficult times.
Cześć wszystkim. Dzisiaj chciałabym podzielić się z Wami bardzo trudnym tematem, o którym nie mogłam rozmawiać przez ostatnie 2,5 miesiąca, ale w końcu mogę, więc mam nadzieję, że w tym filmiku wyjaśnię jak najwięcej, bo chciałabym być z Wami transparentna i żebyście zrozumieli, co mi się przytrafiło przez ostatni czas. Generalnie 12 września dowiedziałam się o pozytywnym wyniku testu antydopingowego z próbki pobranej 12 sierpnia, czyli przed turniejem w Cincinnati. I był to dla mnie ogromny cios. Byłam w szoku i ta sytuacja sprawiła, że było we mnie bardzo dużo lęku.
Here, let's establish the scene. Over the past few years, Swiatek has emerged as one of the most dominant players in women's tennis. Several Grand Slam victories and extended periods of dominance in the rankings, the kind of achievement that most athletes hope to achieve throughout their careers. Everything appeared flawless from the outside. She was succeeding. She was receiving recommendations. She was starting to become a worldwide celebrity. However, it appears that the person behind all that achievement was coping with pressure and expectations that were beginning to become too much to handle. Iga discussed how alienating it may be at the top of women's tennis during the interview. Everyone anticipates that you will prevail in every game. Every setback becomes a crisis. Every victory falls short of expectations rather than surpassing them. Although it doesn't necessarily appear in the win-loss column, the psychological toll of that kind of pressure has an impact on players in ways that spectators may not always recognize or comprehend.
Ons is somebody that was one of the first players to be super nice to me when I was 15 coming on tour, and I was scared, but of just meeting like people that you saw on TV, and she was one of the players that was really nice. So I think especially her. Maybe just the angry betters online. They're a little bit annoying, but like I love the block button. So I know it was like a thing on Twitter about how much I block people, but it's like, bye.
Coco Gauff enters the picture at this point. Coco and Iga have been rivals for some time now. They competed against one another in major games. They fought for points in the rankings. They have participated in the same discussion over women's tennis's future. On paper, they ought to be adversaries who avoid one another. However, Iga claims that their connection changed into something very different. According to Iga, Coco contacted her during a particularly trying time in her career, as a sincere friend who understood that Iga was having difficulties rather than as a rival or someone attempting to gain insight into her thoughts. In professional sports, such gestures are uncommon. Athletes are taught to never exhibit weakness, to keep emotional distance, and to view everyone else as competition. However, it seems that Coco either didn't receive that memo or received it and thought it was worthless. The interview didn't go into great detail about what Iga was dealing with, but it appears from reading between the lines that she was experiencing burnout and the kind of mental tiredness that results from being continuously examined. Because you're constantly expected to be perfect, each error is examined and evaluated. When you can have a bad day without it turning into an embarrassing anecdote, your level of mental toughness is irrelevant. Everybody has their boundaries. When Coco reached out at that time, Iga had someone to talk to who genuinely understood what she was going through. That is the crucial aspect of this narrative. Coco wasn't merely providing meaningless platitudes or general support. She was sharing the viewpoint of someone who had gone through comparable things, someone who understands what it's like to have high expectations at an early age, someone aware of the particular demands of being the best in women's tennis. The disparity in their ages and career paths makes this even more intriguing. Iga is older and has held the position for a longer period of time. Even though Coco is younger, she has had to deal with high expectations since she was a teenager. Despite being at different phases of their careers, they managed to connect through their similar experiences with pressure and public criticism. You can't make or fake that. It's a real relationship. Iga described how she was able to change her thoughts about her career and her status in tennis through her chats with Coco. It's easy to lose perspective when going through a difficult time. You begin to think that everyone is against you, that nothing you do is good enough, and that perhaps you're not meant for this level of competitiveness. It can mean the difference between persevering and giving up if you have someone who understands you and can remind you of why you initially started playing. There's a lot of irony in this situation. In the end, Coco Gauff, which many consider to be Iga's primary adversary in women's tennis, was one of the players that kept Iga competitive. That completely contradicts the narrative that the tennis media frequently promotes about rivalries, which is centered on hatred and hatred. On the court, they certainly compete fiercely, but off the court, they seem to have forged the bond that goes beyond rankings and results. This reveals a lot about Coco Gauff's personality as well. She didn't need to contact Iga. Great, one less person I have to worry about in the rankings. She could have maintained her distance and focused solely on her professional goals. Rather, she chose companionship and empathy.
That's the kind of thing that conveys a lot about a person's personality, yet doesn't appear in statistics. In the interview, Iga made it quite evident that Coco's assistance came at a pivotal moment. When discussing her career, she used the strong word saved. This implies that getting a pep talk or feeling a little better weren't the only reasons. This involved Coco assisting Iga in resolving a problem that was so severe that it was endangering her capacity to compete at the top level. That is important. This revelation's timing is also intriguing. Both players continue to compete at the top of the game and are quite active. This isn't a retiring athlete feeling sentimental about their past. Iga and Coco are still learning how they relate to tennis and to each other, and this is all taking place in real time. Iga appears to be in a lot better place today than she was when she was having difficulties, based on the fact that she felt comfortable discussing this in public. This anecdote also underlines the difficulties professional athletes have with their mental health. Because tennis is an individual activity, it is especially severe. You're by yourself out there. You cannot conceal yourself behind teammates. You own every victory, you own every defeat. Every vulnerable moment is visible to all. Even the strongest people can be crushed by the pressure of it. Furthermore, athletes have just lately begun to discuss these difficulties candidly. Being part of Iga's support network during a trying period most likely benefited them both. Iga received the assistance she required, and by assisting someone else in resolving similar problems, Coco probably discovered more about herself and how to manage stress. That's how genuine friendships function. They are not biased. The relationship develops and benefits both parties. Fans of tennis have largely responded favorably to this interview, praising the candor and the window into the human aspect of professional athletics. However, there will always be those who attempt to portray this as a sign of weakness, or who wonder if sportsmen should discuss their difficulties in public. Those folks are completely misunderstanding the point. Asking for assistance when you need it and discussing difficulties are strengths rather than weaknesses. It's also important to remember that in earlier tennis eras, this kind of scenario would have been almost unthinkable. It was a different culture. It was expected of players to be tough, to never show softness, and to manage everything in private. The openness with which Iga can discuss this and Coco's willingness to provide support across rivalry lines demonstrate how far the sport has come in its understanding of player well-being and mental health. The way women's tennis is covered by tennis media is also called into question by the relationship between Iga and Coco. The story is always around rivalries, hatred, drama, and tension, but the real world is frequently far more complex. Players can respect and encourage one another off the court while engaging in intense competition. Even while the tennis media often tries to portray those characteristics as mutually incompatible, they are not. Additionally, Iga's remarks about Coco preserving her career changed the context of their on-court struggles. There is likely a level of respect and understanding between them now when they play each other. They get a sense of each other's experiences. They understand the hardships and sacrifices required to maintain that level. Because they both understand exactly what's at stake, their matches are likely far more competitive as a result of their common understanding. This narrative serves as a reminder that technical proficiency and physical prowess are not the only factors that contribute to success in sports. At the top levels, where everyone is physically gifted, the mental aspect of competition is equally, if not more, significant. Having friends who can help you keep perspective, having a solid support network, and having individuals who can relate to your situation are all important. Iga acknowledges the fact by giving Coco credit for supporting her during a difficult period. It's interesting to consider how this relationship evolved. Tennis players frequently run into each other at competitions, but friendships don't always follow. There had to be a connection between Coco and Iga. A closer connection was made possible by a specific event or conversation. Perhaps it was a common tournament experience. Perhaps it started as a lighthearted discussion before becoming more serious. Whatever it was, it developed into something significant enough that Iga believes it saved her career. Because the word saved is so dramatic, it continues to stick out. Iga could have claimed that Coco was there for her, supported her, or assisted her. All of those statements would have been admirable. But she included the term saved, which suggests that her career was in grave danger. This transforms this tale from endearing to truly meaningful. This went beyond simply feeling better. This had to do with Coco supporting Iga's continued participation in the sport. It's also important to think about how this may affect women's tennis in the future. It's beneficial for the sport as a whole if the best players encourage one another during trying moments, rather than disparaging one another. It fosters a more positive, competitive atmosphere. It demonstrates to aspiring players that you can be intense rivals and still treat each other with respect. Compared to the poisonous rivalry storylines that have dominated sports media for decades, that paradigm is far superior. Coco Gauff has been rather candid about the challenges she has had in her work and her personal journey with mental health. She has discussed how to deal with expectations from an early age, how to respond to criticism on social media, and how to distinguish her value from her performance on the court. She was perhaps particularly qualified to assist Iga when she was facing comparable difficulties. People who have been there themselves can sometimes provide the best assistance. Iga's self-awareness was also disclosed throughout the conversation. She recognized she was having difficulties and required assistance. She was willing to accept assistance from someone who, according to conventional sports theory, ought to have only been viewed as a rival. In professional sports, such a level of self-awareness and willingness to be vulnerable is uncommon, and it most likely had a significant impact on her capacity to overcome whatever she was facing. Both players are currently at or close to the top of the women's tennis rankings. Iga is vying for ranking points and big slams. Coco is acting in a similar manner. Their companionship hasn't diminished their drive or competitiveness. If anything, having the mental and emotional support necessary to manage the demands of being at that level has likely improved them as players. It's a win-win scenario. It's also intriguing to see how other WTA players have responded. Many players have commented on the interview, complimenting Iga and Coco for being honest about their friendship and mutual support. In women's tennis, it appears that this level of transparency is becoming increasingly common and even encouraged. That's progress, and it's the kind of cultural change that improves the sport for all participants. Another noteworthy aspect of this story is that it doesn't revolve around one player supporting another who is less successful or talented. Coco and Iga are both top-tier competitors. This is the pinnacle of peer support. Because they're supporting one another in overcoming the particular challenges that come with being at the top of their respective fields, it has even greater meaning. Since few people can identify with that particular situation, their relationship is even more precious to them both. This interview has received mostly positive media coverage. However, there has been some inevitable criticism from some who believe athletes should keep these matters private, or who are concerned that displaying vulnerability will be interpreted as weakness. The whole point is missed by those criticisms. People can feel less alone in their own challenges when they are vulnerable and honest about them. Iga and Coco's candor about this helps to normalize discussions on mental health in sports. One of the more sincere stories to emerge from tennis in recent years is Iga Świątek's claim that Coco Gauff saved her career. This is what happens when rivals prioritize support over rivalry and friendship above ego. Their partnership demonstrates that it is possible to compete at the top level and still support one another in the most important situations. If this story struck a chord with you, please hit the like button and subscribe for more in-depth discussions on tennis and its creators.